Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about turning layoffs into leverage. Being laid off can feel like losing momentum overnight. But for many people in the industry, it becomes the moment they reassess their direction and values. So today, we move beyond headlines and fear to explore how layoffs can create inflection points, opening new paths, healthier boundaries, and stronger alignment with the work people actually want to do, ultimately turning a layoff into leverage. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everyone, and we're back, and today with us, I have Yiyi Zhang with us again. It's been a while, but how have you been?
You know, I've been better. It's been warmer. I've been more employed, but hanging in there.
That's
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
And folks, if for those of you who don't know or remember she is the Director of Communications at Outpost 4, founder of Women in Games NYC, former community manager and PR manager at Heart Machine. That's when we last spoke, I believe, when
Mhm.
with you there. And then, geez, let's hear a little bit more about your current role, some of those other roles that I mentioned, and anything else that's going on that you think is worthy of mentioning, because I know you are so involved in a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, the advantage of living in New York City is that there is just a lot to be involved with. Currently, Director of Communications at Outpost 4. We're a digital design agency, so we build both games and applications for clients. And separately, I just joined in on the ground floor of a startup called Navi Jump as their director of partnerships.
Nice.
We're building a online interactive narrative game distribution and publishing platform.
Wow.
So
All
those are
right.
those are like the main hustles currently. And then separately, I've just continued to be involved with various games communities like Women in Games NYC. We've been going strong for 2.5 years now. And Gumbo's been going since 2015, and that has been flourishing. We are month after month in the green monetarily, which is great to feel.
Yeah, definitely.
And growing our membership. We are growing in the activations that we do, everything like that.
That's amazing. And like just so many things going on and on the upswing and stuff too. And I know those can probably help a lot when we hit certain circumstances, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But
Mhm.
before we do that, I don't know if you shared before, but let's just ask, when you're not doing so much, because you are doing a lot for your community, for the industry and everything else, what do you do to kind of unplug and unwind a little bit when you do have some of that free time?
Free time is terrifying to me. The reason I do so much is because I am trying to escape the existential dread of just everyday life. So I guess what I would say to actually unwind when I'm unplugging and taking time for myself, my analog hobby is upcycling Kate Spade bags. So one of my hobbies is fashion. I like fashion, I like style, and I buy like used Kate Spade bags off eBay or at thrift stores and stuff, and I paint on them.
Oh, all right, nice.
Yeah, so it's very analog. It's like no screens, just me and my paints.
I love that. And then what do you do after that? Do you save them? Is that it, or like?
I give them as gifts. I've considered selling them, but I think just the amount of time I put into them, I'd have to sell them for like a couple $100s, and I
Yeah.
don't know that I want to get into that kind of business.
Yeah, it changes things if you do.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's awesome, and appreciate you sharing that. Well, but that said, we still want to get to know you a little bit more. And folks, how we do that here on the show is we have our guests go through the Q box round, which is just a few random questions. So I got some here for E today. So E, are you ready for the Q box round?
I am ready.
All right. First one is, what's one habit you have that has contributed to your success?
The one thing I do is saying yes to everything. So things like you approaching me to be on the podcast, I will say yes to. If somebody's like, "Hey, do we want to collaborate on a project?" I will say yes. If someone's like, "Hey, do you want to go for a coffee and we can walk around Chelsea galleries?" I will say yes, because I feel like you can find opportunity and paths to success through basically anything as long as you open yourself to those opportunities. Often I maybe say yes to too many things and then I'm exhausted, but I would not trade that for anything.
Yeah, it's a good point because I was gonna say it's like sometimes that could be viewed as a double-edged sword, but you do at least call out at times maybe there's too many, but still, there's opportunities abound. It seems every time you do say yes.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely awesome. All right, next is what is your biggest gaming pet peeve?
So I thought about this question when I saw it. I have like gaming culture pet peeve and then I have gaming in games pet peeves. In games themselves, when I play games, the biggest pet peeve I have is games are ultimately a form of relaxation and entertainment for
Mm,
me. So my pet peeve is people who focus too much on winning or correctness, like rules as written and negotiating things like that over fun. Because ultimately we're there to have a good time, and it matters far less whether you got rule 16b on page 8 correctly over did we have a good time? Did we spend a valuable 3 hours together and connect?
yeah, I think
And
that.
then,
Sorry,
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. And in gaming culture, I think gatekeeping is a massive
Yeah, oh
pet
yeah,
peeve of
yeah,
mine. It's just like, oh, you don't belong here because you're a casual gamer, or you aren't ranked platinum in this league, so you can't join our Discord. Things
yeah.
like that. It's just and then you complain that there's like not enough women in games or there's like a diversity problem. Like maybe you're part of perpetuating that culture.
Right. I mean, you got to be mindful of those things too. And because I know sometimes, like in Discord communities, you can have all these roles and stuff, but depending on how those roles are assigned and stuff, that is a form of gatekeeping in a way, and it can really impact people's behaviors and stuff. And the funny thing too, you mentioned about that other one about like not really just enjoying games for the fun of it. I feel like my
Mhm.
son has that problem a little bit because
Oh
there's
no.
moments he gets way too frustrated. It's my oldest one. He gets way too frustrated playing something. I'm like, if you're like having this type of like you're flipping out for this, you shouldn't be playing the game because it's causing more frustration than it is fun, and that's never
Yeah.
a good thing. And I'm always trying to instill that on him, but it's a hard lesson to learn. He'll get it eventually, but
But I guess for some people, they're not so much motivated by entertainment or having fun as just that feeling of satisfaction or immersion or getting good.
yeah,
I It's not something I relate to, especially with the games that I play and the people I play with, but I can see the appeal
yeah. I
of
mean,
maybe
it's a good
pushing
point.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point because I think we all have like different motivations and sense about those things. But I'll still stand my guard when it comes to my son showing extreme frustration where it's like you shouldn't get to that point though. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, last but not least, and the staple here on the show is what game are you playing now?
The main video game I'm playing now is Black Myth Wukong. I'm
Mm.
I'm Chinese, so I feel like I have to for the culture.
There you go.
And and I'm playing Phasmophobia with a partner, and I am in multiple tabletop RPG campaigns. That's kind of how I stay in touch with my friends and juggle gaming at the same time.
Nice. Well, very much appreciate that you shared all that with us today. But now let's get into our conversation. And folks, like I said in the intro, we are talking about turning layoffs into leverage. Because, let's face it, like when a layoff happens, whether it has happened to you or someone else, I mean, it could be pretty impactful in a lot of ways, a negative way, but there's other ways to look at it too. So, to kick things off, when someone is laid off, what's
Mhm.
that biggest misinterpretation they tend to make about what just happened?
So I think like we exist in a very work forward mindset where work sort of defines who you are. It's like the second question you ask someone when you meet them after their name.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest misconception about what happens with a layoff is that somehow you have lost a part of yourself or lost a piece of your identity.
Mm.
Whereas I feel like identity is something that is intrinsic to you and has nothing to do with what you do externally or what your job title is or what your like the piece of the economy that you contribute to.
I think it's a really good point because, like you let in with, like, even regular social gatherings, regardless of who it is with, just good friends, acquaintances, whatever. And if it ever hasn't come up before, usually it's, hey, what do you do for? It's either about the weather or what do you do for work, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we led with talking about the weather.
yeah, exactly.
Our conversation, yeah.
Yep. Exactly. It's like a common thing. But if you look at it, it's like, okay, in some ways, I think we could identify a little bit with the weather being relatable to us based off of the region that we're in,
Sure,
in the
sure.
coldness. But then you look at, but a bigger thing, as you called out to, is then work. And it's such a common place. And if you really dig into that and think about it, it's like we really associate a lot of our identity to that thing. And it's crazy if you think about it, because there, like you said, there's so much more to us than just what we do for work.
Yeah. I do wanna, like, denormalize asking that as a first question. I
Yeah.
wanna be more like kids, where you meet someone, it's like, "What's your name? What's your favorite color?
Yes.
Can we
It's
be friends?"
you know what? There's so many different ways you could go about doing that, and it actually that could be a fun one, right? Hey, what's your favorite color? Who asked that? But at the
Yeah.
same time, you're like, wow, this is different. This is new, and maybe it might not be the perfect thing, but there's so many other things you could lead with. Like, hey, what was the most interesting thing you did last week? Like,
Mhm.
or 2 weeks or whatever. And it really puts people into place and really think about that for a moment, because they're probably used to that question of what do you do for work? So,
Yeah. There's
well,
a community member who used to come onto my streams when I was doing Heart Machine, and his question was always whatever guest I had, it would be, "What is your 3rd favorite dinosaur?" That's a great question. It's
yes.
actually the first question you ask anyone the first time you meet them.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that one too. And I bet you,
Yeah.
and what's awesome about that one too, for me personally, if I'm in like a friend gathering with my family and stuff, I bet you my youngest would come up and be like, "Oh, I'll tell you mine," and then he can be
Yeah.
part of the conversation now, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah, you're
love it.
building more inclusive, accessible places.
Yeah. Ah, this is
Mhm.
great. All right. Well, you brought up that good point too, though, is like, hey, this is part of the misconception about, loss of identity. So and also with that is, I'm sure it's, a bit shocking to us. So,
Mhm.
I want to dive into kind of that initial shock that I'm sure all of us to some degree have felt or are somewhat familiar with. What would you say, what emotional responses are, essentially normal immediately after, finding out about a layoff, and which ones tend to kind of distort decision making if left unchecked?
That's a big question. I would equate it to grieving after a breakup. I think about it that way. Except instead of you breaking up with a person, it's like a third party that's breaking you up and you're not ready for it.
Hmm.
So the emotions that follow are very much the same as the stages of grief. There's like anger and denial and depression and bargaining. And eventually you do want to get around to acceptance, right? But yeah, the initial first reaction is just like, that's this feels terrible. I am sad, I am angry, I feel uncertain, I didn't want this, I am resisting it. It's extremely destabilizing. And those feelings are completely normal and valid to have in the moment, but as you said, if you leave them unchecked and if you continue to just feed into those feelings and have that pain and just dwell on that pain, then that impacts your decision making. Then you're making decisions based on mitigating the pain that you are feeling versus making actual sound decisions based on what is in your best interest.
Yeah. So it sounds like then, I mean, hey, you're gonna experience this initial shock, and in some ways, like, not necessarily like embrace it, but just go through that process, that grieving process. But at the same time, you're in an emotional state where maybe it's not the best time to make those decisions, and then, like, take that time, go through that process, and then start to kind of like lay things out a bit, which it can be tough, especially if we are so tied to our careers as a form of identity. Maybe it takes a little bit
Mhm.
more time, but giving that space is really important to then really think rationally about the situation. And sometimes it might be extremely revealing when we reflect on, like, maybe the place I was at really just had a poor work culture and I never saw it that way until I had the moment to step away from it, whether it was on my terms or theirs. At least now I can recognize that.
Exactly.
When these moments happen and stuff, especially, in the industry, how would you say that, whether it's developers or other people in the industry, how can they like slow down enough to kind of start regaining some of this clarity without losing momentum or confidence? Because let's say someone's working in the industry, they're also working on the side as a solo dev on a project and stuff. And when this hits, it must really like put a block on everything. But what's a way that we can maybe start getting back to where we were before?
I think I would object to the phrasing of without losing momentum or confidence. I think you should just first accept that this is a loss of momentum. This is a full stop on a thing that you invested a lot of time into. And that is a confidence hit because you thought you were going to be on this project or at the studio for much longer than you were. So the slowing down piece is more about feeling those feelings, knowing that yes, this has ended, this thing has stopped, and that you need to take the time to rebuild yourself. And the best way to do that is to slow down, is to not like panic, go on a job search and try to find your next thing right away, or take 30 meetings in your first week after layoffs. Like take a moment to figure yourself out, try to realign your own goals and the things that help you stay motivated and stay sane in this industry, and then work on building the things back up.
You mentioned a good thing there too, in terms of like, when you have that panic moment, like just don't go out and just get any other job or whatever, because who knows, that could be a big mistake, whether it's industry shift, career shift, whatever. It could create some type of friction that you're not even fully aware or at least assessing.
Mhm.
um are there any type of other panic moves that you've seen or know of that people may do? And I guess what are some other strategies where they can really think more about what their long term options are? Maybe doing some self reflection about like what are they really care about.
Yeah. So I come from the perspective of doing tech recruitment. I did 7 years of that before I got into games. And once I got into games at Heart Machine, I was also the in-house interim recruiter and like HR person. So I did a lot of the hiring stuff for about 10 years of my career. And a big panic move that people commonly do post layoffs is like shotgun blasting their resume and portfolio all over the place. They are sending out like dozens of applications a day, not really being mindful of where they're applying, just as long as like there's a job title fit, they're like, okay, I'm going to apply here. But in this industry, especially as competitive as it is now, and as much in a contraction as it is now, there are very few jobs for the number of extremely talented people out there going after those jobs. So you're really hurting yourself if you're sending out resumes all over the place, ending up in these company ATS systems, and then they have your resume, but they're not really looking at it. And then down the line, when you want to reapply or try to thoughtfully apply through a referral at that company, that might not go through because you've already applied once. You might have just preempted yourself because you had that like initial panic of sending your thing everywhere.
Mm.
So my advice is really take your time, especially in the early days, and put your best application forward, your most thoughtful application forward when you are mentally ready for it, rather than just shooting your shot wherever you think it might land.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I mean, it just goes back to what we were talking about before. If you're really giving yourself that time to reflecting on the past, on yourself, like maybe even where you want to be, like what kind of things do you want to do? Obviously, those hold a lot of weight, and sometimes we don't give us enough credit for them or practice enough self empathy or self care in terms of what that really means. And it's one thing, obviously, if hey, that sounds very appealing and exciting, but I think it's another where if you're doing the things that you like, or at least you like enough where in a way it's no different than like catering to your skill sets, right? Your strengths.
Mhm.
Then you're more likely to thrive in those situations than you are trying to do something that maybe you struggle a little bit with, even though you can do it okay. But if you're not a fan of it, it can really open yourself to some of those types of opportunities. But sometimes we might not give us ourselves the credit for.
Yeah, exactly.
We talk a little bit about that initial shock and everything, but
Mhm.
I want to kind of go more into like, okay, fine, we've processed this, we understand it, but now like, how do we turn this unfortunate event that so many of us in the industry are going through into something that we can actually leverage? So when we view these moments strategically, what opportunities do you think layoffs can create that rarely exist during stable employment?
There's so many things, and I have found a lot of these things while I was processing my impending layoffs at Heart Machine and then the actual layoffs when they happened. And it goes back to being able to say yes to things.
Yep.
I when I was like full-time W-2 employed, I couldn't get in on the ground floor of my friend's very exciting startup.
Mm.
I couldn't work on like side contract jobs at small game studios because I just simply didn't have the time. I was like already working from like 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. because I was in a community facing role, and communities don't stop just because I need to sleep. So I was, I was really just putting a lot of time into that one job and neglecting a lot of the other exciting things that I could have gotten into. Other things were just taking care of my physical and mental health more because I was working so hard. I was like, "Oh, well, I could go to the gym tomorrow. Today I've got this like interview and then I have these meetings and publisher activations or something. So I'll take care of myself later." And being laid off gives me the time to just reassess my own physical meat body and give it what it needs also. So I feel like I'm the best like physical and health shape of my life right now. And that's not something to be lightly
No,
disregarded.
not
Yeah.
at all. And yeah, I mean, and I think these are just some of the things that can happen and that you shared from your own experience that like, it's funny. And there's some great things that can come out of stable employment and stuff, but the other side of it too is it can often prevent us from really seeing like what else is out there. And it's not to say that like you have to look for those things, but like what else like that you can incorporate into your own life and everything else. And if you don't, it's tough. Like I know, for example, I mean, I don't actively share this or whatever, but the last job I had was at an agency job, and
Mhm.
then we had our holiday vacation for December, and I got back in, and it was a Friday for 2nd of January, and then I was let go,
Oh
and
my
that
gosh.
it was rough. It's like,
Right
oh,
after the
right after
holidays.
the holidays, right? Your classic layoff story, if you will. But then it's like I look back to that moment too and realize that if I and I did have plans to kind of like start my own thing and everything
Mhm.
as well, but if that didn't happen, there is probably a good chance if like they never had any they let's say they never laid me off, there's probably a good chance I wouldn't even be where I am now today because of that change. And I think that that in itself is sometimes you just need that push to do that
Mhm.
thing you either always wanted or to do something differently or to find something that's out there that you feel you bet you do deserve. And I'm not just talking about like a form of entitlement or anything like that, but you do deserve because you're putting in the work, you're putting in the effort, and you're really thinking hard about how to care for yourself and maybe care for a bunch of other people in a community that you're looking to serve.
So you turned your layoff into leverage.
Yeah, I guess you could say
Yeah.
that. I was trying to for a while and building up for it. And then finally, I'm like, this is it. If it doesn't work, I'll figure it out. But I'm going to at least do what I can to make it work. And so far,
Mhm.
it has been working out. But yeah, it's
Okay.
still tough because I remember personally, like, it felt like a huge blow because it's like every review, you get glowing numbers, you get a raise,
Mhm.
awesome. And the next thing you know, they're like, yeah, it's not working out. No explanation really why, very vague. And it's just like
Wow.
it felt like a huge distrust. And it's like, well, where did it go wrong? Like why, like it just, when you get blindsided like that, it's rough. And then you're just, yeah, for anybody who goes through that, it's tough.
Of course.
So when we're looking at different ways to kind of leverage these things, these unfortunate moments into opportunities, how would you say that people can use this exact moment, kind of like we described ourselves, to kind of like maybe reassess fit, role, studio culture, or even creative direction too? Again, rather than just like chasing that next job, there's got to be more to it. So what are ways we can reassess these things that are really important to us?
Yeah, I would say I have like two prongs to my response. The first one is like talking to other people who have been laid off. I don't know if you know this, but like when game studios have been doing their layoffs these days, all these like little discords of ex employees from X studio start popping up. So I'm in an X Heart Machine Discord server where we just kind of talked about our experiences as at the studio generally, like what we are looking for next. Obviously, we help each other with job search, but also we just help each other get some catharsis and some review of the time that we had spent at the studio. So one of the things I would say to reassess what you want to do with your life is just to talk to your former colleagues, talk to people that you worked with, and do a retro. Like, you're like, how was that for us? Was that great? What were some things that weren't so great that we would want to be different going forward? What were some things that were incredible that we'd want to keep in the next role that we're doing? So just having those conversations, both with people you immediately worked with and also collaborators from around your space, has been a really good grounding way of assessing those things. And then the other prong of it is just think about whether you still want to be in this industry or still want to do the same role you were just in. One of the talks that I do just in games industry career stuff generally is how to sidestep into or out of the games industry. And it comes down to like listing out my skills, or listing out your skills, listing out your experience, listing out the things that you can do, but without attaching them to a particular project or industry or a job. Just, these are my skills. I'm a great writer, I'm a good communicator, I can do graphic design, I can program, whatever those things you are, like put them out into a vision board of yourself, and then start thinking, okay, what kind of roles, what kind of industries would those skill sets fit into, rather than try to like mold yourself into a specific direction.
Yeah, I absolutely love the skills things too, because I think what we often forget is that we could have these skills or abilities that we're really good at and might not, again, give ourselves much credit for, and they can translate really well into a lot of different types of careers, opportunities, things like that. There's that side of it. And the other one is just, again, I think there's something to be said about really looking at your those things as opposed to a specific role is really just going to help, increase the quality of your life. And that's not just your life. It could be your family's life. It could be
Mm-hmm.
your partners, your friends, like anybody else that's a part of it. It's really a big deal. And again, I mean, I've heard these types of conversations so many other different spaces, and everything else, and they all really come down to the same thing. And it's funny how I think, as a generalized whole, that a lot of us as people don't necessarily think about us in that way, ourselves in that way. And it's kind of upsetting, because like we're really better than that and a lot. But again, we just, I keep using this phrase, but don't give ourselves that much credit. The the other thing that you said that I thought was hilarious, well, not hilarious, but just ironic, was when you said, talk to others. That's exactly what I did when I was laid off too. Is like I reached
Mm-hmm.
out, like I had some friends there, and I reached out and talked to them a bit. There was someone else that was let go, and we were hanging out like a few times there, just to not even realize, like we did exactly that same process where, like, hey, what wasn't the greatest? What could have been better? What things were great? And even to this day, there was, like, when I look back to that experience overall, is like I I am very grateful I took that job and I had what experience I did with it, because I felt, and I was right, where it would allow me to grow, it would allow me to be a better person at execution and doing all these other things. And from that, I think it really helped to where I am now too. So it's like there's definitely some good things. And then there's definitely not some good things too. But at the same time, that whole process was just so helpful. And there's always going to be good wherever you are. There's always going to be some bad. But the important thing is recognizing those things and seeing how you can improve upon it. And maybe by you realizing those things when you're going out into the workforce in the world, wherever that might be, you can then bring that learning with you and then iterate, improve whatever culture you're going to be part of in the future. And just, I know it sounds cheesy, but then you could definitely be putting your impact and making the world a better place.
I sure hope so. At least I'm trying.
Yeah, right. And,
Yeah,
and I think that's,
all the best we can do, all of
yeah,
us.
but that's,
Yeah.
and if you think about it though, that's one of the best things that can come out of this too. It's like, hey, I learned, I had some time to reflect, I learned, and now when I'm moving forward, let's see what we can do to make sure maybe these things don't happen again the way they do. I mean, we're not going to solve all the problems, but we can definitely help with our input and from our experiences. To kind of start wrapping things up here, because I know we're coming on time. I'm curious from your perspective, what would you say? What does a strong, intentional? And I don't know if I even want to say this, but like a recovery path look like compared to a reactive one? Let's essentially care. What's a strong road and a path to take over being reactive?
I'm gonna caveat this by saying that I am in a pretty privileged position myself, just as far as like having other financial stability and a lot of really strong community and friend and colleague support. So not everyone can take like the strong intentional recovery path, but I do feel strongly that there is a way. And another piece of privilege I had was that I knew that the layoffs were coming about like 6 to 8 months before they were happening. So I had time to like plan my path very proactively. I even made a video about it at the time when I suspected that they were coming. So I would say it looks like taking a couple weeks maybe to sort of emotionally stabilize and financially stabilize. That includes like reviewing your budget, reviewing like what severance you might get or like benefits that you might have or a runway on your health insurance or just personal cash flow. And then figuring out what industries or roles you want to target and what comp range you're able to accept within those roles, and taking time to then like update your portfolio, your resume, your LinkedIn, all of those things, and start reaching out to people, start networking, post the green banner on LinkedIn saying you're open to work, open to referrals, want to do some information calls, things like that. And once you've done those things, maybe set up some kind of structure for yourself, like do a daily routine that includes taking care of yourself as well as job applications. So have like some kind of routine that feels sustainable and also is grounding for you personally.
Yeah, I
Yeah, those are I think what strong intentional recovery would look like
yeah,
for me.
and you mentioned networking too, and I
Mhm.
think, because I know sometimes, not necessarily a trigger word, but I know sometimes networking can sound like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. But I mean, I think another way to approach essentially networking is really just building up your like a support system. But maybe that's not the right word to use too. It's more about like just meeting new people and learning more about their experiences. It's that's essentially what networking is. But if we want to like deformalize it, it's really about meeting new people, and then through that learning about them, it
Mhm.
can create lots of other opportunities. Like you said, I mean, you even said in the past, like you had some opportunities in the past where it was friends forming a startup and everything. And part of the best opportunities do come from, it could be friends, it could be people you have your acquaintances with. There's lots of other things, but you don't get to have those opportunities if you're not like meeting new people, reaching out, learning about them and what they're doing. And what's a really cool thing is when you go out just to meet new people. And it could be something very simple. I just want to find out all the cool different projects people are working on, maybe. I don't know.
Mhm.
And then through that, naturally, it's like a human characteristic and behavior where if you're asking about someone else all the time and very intrigued about it, they're likely to ask about what you're doing. And let's say, well, right
Mhm.
now I'm focused. I just was let go. I'm focused on trying to do X, Y, or Z that really is about catering to my skill sets opposed to the
Mhm.
typical roles I have. Then
Yeah.
you're creating your own opportunities because you're willingly out there thinking about other people, what they're doing. And they're like, hey, you know what? I appreciate you asking about me. I see you're in need. Hey, if something comes up, I'll keep you in mind. You seem like a cool person. You seem like you have a lot of skill sets that could be applicable to a lot of people that I'm aware of and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I were on a networking panel at
Yes.
PAX last year,
Yep.
and, like, another thing that I think people should keep in mind when it comes to networking is that it doesn't have to be, like, going to an event and shaking hands and meeting people IRL and exchanging business cards. It could just be shit posting on Discord
Yep.
or just, like, LinkedIn commenting on people's posts about their own experiences, things like that. It doesn't have to be as high lift as, like, physical in space things, especially for people who don't necessarily live in urban centers and don't have events to go to.
Yeah. Some of the
Yeah,
best opportunities and friendships and even just acquaintances come out of just normal everyday conversations. And I think that's
yeah,
what we often forget about when we think about networking. It's not always
yeah,
that. In fact, if anything, I'd say they're it's more recommended to
yeah,
to
just
do
do
it
it, like,
that
more
way.
naturally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's casual, it's fun, and then later something. And honestly, some of the opportunities I have gotten have been from some of those things. It's like, oh wow, it's like I like this person, and we catch up every now and then out of like friendships, and then later, oh, by the way, Andrew, you do these things, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, and if they don't happen, that's fine because we're like, what do we have to lose? Just the opportunity of a business related one, but I still have that friendship. I still have that good acquaintance, and who knows, that's going to produce so much more value than just
Mhm.
like one business interaction.
Exactly. Oh, and playing games, obviously a great
Yeah.
way to network and to make friends. Actually, one of the gigs I work now that's semi-regular is I do some freelance writing for Adorama, which is like a camera
Yep.
and computer hardware
Because they're pretty
equipment
big in New
place.
York.
Yeah, they're pretty big in New York, and they have a whole content creation arm, and they're expanding into games. And
Oh.
the way I networked into that is my regular Thursday GM for our OD&D game is their like creative director.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've known him for years. We've been playing together. We have saved the world many times together in our heads. And then he found out that, like I was job insecure and stuff. He's like, wait, but I need some people to write about games. Do you want to do that for us sometime? So, yeah, opportunities come in unexpected ways. And
And
sometimes it's just through doing the things that you were doing anyway.
yeah, like perfect example. You were just playing games, and then there you go. Something comes up. Sweet.
Yeah.
Love it. I can't thank you enough for being here today and talking about this because I don't think these types of things get discussed as much as they should and everything, especially in this time. But anyways, that said, we covered a lot. What are any like main tips, suggestions, call outs from our conversation that you'd like listeners to take away with?
Oh, I would say don't panic and make bad decisions just because you are feeling like shock or grief. Let's see, reach out to your network because you'll find that people are far more supportive than maybe you would even give them credit for. And play more games. It can open up opportunities and it's just great for mental health.
I love it. So quick and simple. And these are all things that we can easily remember, folks. And as you can see from our conversation, they do have weight, they do have value, and they will have an impact on how you leverage yourself, whatever situation you come across. Again, I can't thank you enough for making the time, being here on the show with us again, especially on such a subject. And where can people like connect with you, find out more about the work you're doing now, the organizations? Please drop us some links.
Oh, I think the main link is just I'm at YIYIWZHANG, EEW Zhang on all of the social platforms. I took the time this year to just make everything the same handle so it's easier to share. So yeah,
Awesome.
you can find me and all the organizations that I work with through that.
All right, excellent. And is there a preferred one that you have? I mean, we'll list them on the show notes as well, but is there a preferred one or one that you use regularly, or it doesn't matter?
I use all of them. I'm just chronically
She's
online.
active on all of them. So if wherever E is, or wherever you are, E will be as well.
Yeah.
E, I can't thank you enough. It's been great, and yeah, just I'm speechless clearly. So thank you again for making the time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.